What's up, everyone? Welcome to another UFC Quick Picks here on the Mayo Media Network. We have UFC Mexico City on Saturday. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval, number 2. 13 fights on the slate. It's going to be, I think, a fun, high-action card. We're up at 7,000 plus feet of elevation. It's going to bring some crazy times. I think it's going to bring a lot of big scores. As usual, I'm going to give you my favorite cash game play, tournament play, salary play, and a match by like from this week's card. Before I do, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and why don't you give us a comment below? Again, give me a dog. I've been rolling with these dog questions. I like to see who you guys want to play. There's a lot of heavy underdogs this week, so that's what makes it challenging. If you can pick the correct one, who's going to win, you're going to have a big leg up on the field. We'll talk about at least one underdog on this card. Without further ado, let's get into my cash game play of the week, who's going to be Brandon Moreno at 8.8K. I like Brandon Moreno this week in the main event favorite, minus 295 against Royval, 8.8K. Just a nice mix of money line safety at near minus 300 betting line, plus 135 to win inside the distance, 25 minutes to work with in the main event. And I mean, he's already fought Brandon Royval. He beat Brandon Royval in the first round. It ended via injury, but Moreno had already taken him down twice on 2 attempts, was dominating with control, had Royval's back, was pounding him on the ground. And yeah, there was a shoulder, or I think a wrist or shoulder injury at the end there, but Royval just, since then, he's fought 4 times, and in 2 of those fights, he was also taken down 8 times. Like, his takedown defense is not good at 40%. His striking defense is not good at 45%. I think Moreno is better technically everywhere, especially as a wrestler and grappler. Moreno is very experienced. He's gone 5 rounds several times, and he's going to be the minute winner in this matchup. I do always think Royval is opportunistic enough to catch him, and especially if the fight takes place on the feet. You never know. Royval could hurt Moreno, could turn the momentum late, but I think Moreno has an excellent floor-ceiling combination, a lot of grappling equity, some finishing equity, good safety in the money line, only 8.8K, which is kind of cheap on this card, so a really strong cash game option this week. All right, my tournament play of the week, I am going to give you a contrarian option here in Mateus Mendonça at 8.4K. He's only minus 125 to win over Jesus Aguilar. You look at his box score, 5 points, 34 points. He's 0-2 in the UFC. He just got, his last fight was horrible against Nate Maness, in which he tried to take him down early. Maness stuffed those takedowns, and then Mendonça just kind of bailed out on leg lock attempts and got beaten up and knocked out in the first round. It was a horrible loss, and it definitely makes me concerned here, especially in an extended fight. I really don't trust Mendonça has the cardio. And that's partially why he's a near pick'em against Jesus Aguilar. But on the other hand, I think there's some overreaction here because Mendonça was minus 300 to beat Nate Maness, who, by the way, Nate Maness is 5'10 with a 72-inch reach. He's a really big dude for flyweight. And now Mendonça is fighting probably the smallest guy at flyweight in Jesus Aguilar, who's 5'4" with a 62-inch reach, way smaller and way less physical than Nate Maness, who has a 0% takedown defense rate and who lands 1.6 strikes per minute. I mean, I like, this is like such a dramatic difference in opponent from Maness to Aguilar, yet Mendonça was minus 300 there, minus 125 here. And granted, I do think Aguilar is got the better cardio, more durability, and could win and finish Mendonça if the fight lasts 15 minutes. There's some, viability on Aguilar because of that, but his 17-second knockout win against Shannon Ross is not meaningful to me. Ross has no durability. Aguilar is not really much of a striker, never been a power threat. He's more of a grappler, a wrestling threat, but I think Mendonça's better there. I think Mendonça's a better grappler. I think Mendonça is more versatile as a striker, potentially a better finisher on the ground as well. Plus 140 to win inside the distance at 8.4K, and I think he's going to get overlooked here in a range next to Manuel Torres, Yair Rodriguez, and Raoni Barcelo. So a pure contrarian option, maybe boom or bust, may be somewhat dependent on an early finish, but I think it's an interesting buyback spot, a spot I like to be contrarian in tournaments this week. Next up, my salary play of the week, I'm going to go with Brian Ortega, 7.7K, the underdog in the co-main event, which, by the way, is also 5 rounds, so that's another very important matchup on the slate. He's plus 130 against Yair Rodriguez, and you can make a very good case for Yair Rodriguez being the more active fighter, this taking place in Mexico, and Yair sort of being the better kickboxer, better at longer distances against Ortega, who doesn't have great striking defense. I could see Yair just kind of running away with this fight at kicking range, maybe hurting Ortega over the duration, but I think people, again, are probably overreacting to the first fight here, which ended via a shoulder injury in the first round. People are calling it a submission. It was not a submission. It was not extended in any way. It was not locked in any way. It was a shoulder injury, and an injury that occurred when Brian Ortega had taken down Rodriguez and was on top of him. So that's where I think his biggest advantage is going to come, Ortega's, in grappling, especially from top position, where Rodriguez, since then, has continued to prove he's just not that great. He's coming off a loss to Volkanovski, which he was taken down 7 times and gave up 7 minutes of control in less than 15 minutes. So Brian Ortega has question marks in layoff, health and mindset maybe, but he's still a better submission grappler than Yair. He's been wrestling a lot in his fights lately. I think he can have success on the ground, and maybe he gets outstruck, but Yair only has a 51% striking defense, and Yair's never been the best minute winner on the feet. Ortega's very capable in the pocket. Bottom line, I'm going too much into the matchup here. Ortega's 7.7K in a 5-round fight in which he should have grappling equity on a card where there's lots of heavy underdogs. I think Ortega has probably the best floor of any underdog on this slate. He has a strong ceiling. He's plus 180 to win inside the distance. We're getting a salary discount on him. We're potentially getting an ownership discount on him too. So if you want to play Yair, that's fine. I think he can win this fight over the duration, but I definitely think Ortega can compete as well. I like his grappling upside better, and the price is nice at 7.7K. And finally, my matchup of the week, I'm going with Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. Rosas is 9K, Turcios 7.2K. Rosas minus 200, minus 240 here. Turcios plus 200. I think Rosas is only 19 years old, by the way. Rosas is going to have success early in this fight. He's mostly been a grappling dependent fighter. Turcios does not defend takedowns well. It's very likely that Rosas gets on top of Turcios early and potentially just submits him. The thing is, Turcios has shown great survivability. In fact, Turcios was taken down 7 times by Kevin Natividad and 6 times by Brady Highstand in the UFC, and Turcios won both of those fights, which I think shows you it's not just one takedown and it's over for Turcios. He can land takedowns himself. He can do reversals. He can scramble. He can win by submission. He can throw a lot of volume on the feet. And he probably has better cardio than Rosas too. So I am really concerned if Rosas doesn't get Turcios out there quickly. I think, and from a DraftKings perspective, I think Rosas is either going to have to land takedowns and just submit Turcios, land takedowns and control him and rinse and repeat for the majority of the fight, or Turcios is just going to take over and win this thing. I think Turcios is a live underdog at 7.2K, throws a ton of strikes on the ground. So I think he has considerable DraftKings upside for that reason, even if he doesn't win inside the distance. So I think both guys will score well in a win. Rosas will definitely get some ownership at 9K, but it's among my favorite fights on the slate and my matchup of the week. All right, guys, that's it for this week's UFC Quick Picks. Thank you so much for the support. You can follow me on Twitter, Appley, TTPP, dailyfanmma.com for all your DraftKings breakdowns needs. Best of luck out there. Stay safe, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.